So our next focus will shift towards the World Bank. So next institution that we're going to discuss now is called the World Bank. We are done with the discussion of the IMF, its role, its key objectives. Now our focus is shifting towards the World Bank. Now, as we were discussing about the IMF, the World Bank was created at a time when IMF was created. So there were two different institutions were created at that time in 1944, IMF and the World Bank. So now we're going to have an understanding of the World Bank. So the World Bank in itself, it states it's a bank. It's not a monetary fund or something. It's a bank basically. So it's a world bank. So we can expect it's a bank for the world, for any country. So an international organization dedicated to providing financing, advice, and research to developing nations to aid their economic advancement. So its mission is to provide financing, advice, research to which nations? Developing nations or the underdeveloped nations. Its focus is not primarily on developed nation. Likewise, your IMF had focus in both the countries, either whether it is developed or underdeveloped. But over here, its primary focus is on developing countries. So it provides them financing. It provides them research, and it provides them advice. So let's further move on. So it came into existence. The World Bank was created at the end of the World War II as a result of many European and Asian countries needing financing to fund reconstruction efforts. So after World War II, we can recall that because of a major world war, many countries were financially distressed. They had to go through a reconstruction process. And in that time, a World Bank was created so it can help out these countries to go through their reconstruction process. The bank is successful in providing financing for those devastated or destroyed countries so that they can be ready to exist in the future. So it was providing financing for these devastated countries. So it came into existence after the World War II. The International Bank for Reconstruction and Development was the first multilateral development bank before World War II had ended. Harry Dexter White and John Maynard Keynes conceptualized an international institution to stabilize exchange rates and provide a source of financing and reconstruction and development among countries ravaged by the war. So before the World War, there was a bank with the name of International Bank of Reconstruction and Development. There was that bank. But after that, especially by John Maynard Keynes, he was an economist, they conceptualized to have one international institution so that it can help in stabilizing the exchange rates such as the IMF, and one is said to be World Bank. The World Bank has the primary objective, if you can read this slogan, working for a world free of poverty. So the World Bank primary focus is, to be honest, is to make the world free of poverty. It does not want people to die under poverty. So there was a conference held in which the World Bank came into existence, which is known as Bretton Woods Conference, in which both the World Bank came into existence and also IMF came into existence. So this conference was held in 1944 with 730 delegates and 45 allied nations to regulate the international monetary and financial order after the conclusion of World War II. So after World War II, they sat down together and created two institutions, World Bank and the IMF. If I read the World Bank, long-term loan for distressed economy and member countries. IMF, grants the short-term loans to develop the cyclical disturbance in the economy. So one, the World Bank is working for countries which are literally distressed, economically distressed, whereas IMF is working for the cyclical issues in the economy, such as current account deficit, such as balance of payments inequilibrium, trade issues. So IMF is working on that side, whereas the World Bank is working on the other side, right? So let's move on further. Progress. The new bank received most of its funds from New York investment community. The bank made its first general reconstruction loans to France, which was $250 million, largest ever, the Netherlands, Denmark, and Luxembourg in 1947. So these are the primary achievements of World Bank, helping these countries to reconstruct themselves. The first bank's first bond offering abroad worth $5 million came in London in 1951. China used IDA loans for agriculture and educational projects, while oil wells were financed with IBRD loans. So basically, IDA and IBRD are two different groups under the World Bank, and China was the country which used these loans to grow themselves. It also have the name of Pakistan. World Bank also helped resolve the Indus water dispute between India and Pakistan. So World Bank played a very important role when India and Pakistan was going through an Indus water dispute. So this was the bank, this was the international institution which helped up in order to resolve this issue. Furthermore, some key dates to remember. World Bank was created, or the World Bank Group was created, first came into being in 1960s. In 1946, World Bank founded along with sister institution, the Monetary Fund. So the World Bank was founded in 1946. International Finance Corporation, IFC, created to support private ventures and industrial loans, that founded in 1956. International Development Association, IDA, created to give soft loans to very poor countries, came into power in 1960. 1966, International Center for Settlement of International Dispute, ICID, came into power. 1988, the new Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, MIGA, ensures against political risk and encourage private investment. So these are different. Basically, this is a complete World Bank group which have these components, such as the World Bank in itself, International Financial Corporation, International Development Association, International Center of Settlement. So these are just certain key dates that all these came into power. So this became an entire world group, World Bank group. So one is International Bank for Construction and Development, which is IBRD, International Development Association, IDA, International Finance Corporation, IFC, Multilateral Investment Bank, and International Center. So this is a basically World Bank group. We call this entire World Bank group, such as if I take an example of a normal bank. So normal bank has different divisions. It has a division for car loans. It has a division for house loans. It has an investment banking division. It can also create an asset management company. It can also create IPOs. So such a bank has different divisions. Similarly, World Bank Group also contains and consists of different divisions also. So I'm just giving you 5 minutes to conceptualize. And if you have anything in mind, why don't you just up till now just create a difference between World Bank and IMF? So we have studied IMF also and World Bank also. So up till now, whatever differences you thought were there, just write them down or think of it. Giving you 5 minutes to conceptualize that. अब further move करते हैं to the next slide. ऑब्जेक्टिव्स, अब ऑब्जेक्टिव्स को डील करते हैं वर्ल्ड बैंक, इसके बाद और आप ज़्यादा डिफ्रेंशिएट कर सकोगे in between World Bank and the IMF also. Number one objective, to provide long-run capital to member countries for economic reconstruction and development. So it provides a long-run capital. So it could be 20, 30 years, a long-run capital so that a country's economic reconstruction can be made. A country can come back to its economic growth. Two, to induce long-run capital investment for assuring balance of payments equilibrium and balanced development of international trade. Again, a long-run investment for assuring balance of payments equilibrium so that companies can have a long-term basis for financing the balance of payments. So it provides a long-run capital investment. Three, to provide guarantee for loans granted to small and large units and other projects of member countries. So it provides guarantee of loans. Like let's suppose if a project, a member country wants to issue loans for its project, World Bank can provide a guarantee on that loan. That if in case the member country defaults, the World Bank is there to finance it. That guarantee plays a big role for any country's issuance of bonds. If Pakistan issuing bonds and it has a guarantee of World Bank that if Pakistan defaults, World Bank will pay the money. That means that investor will confidently invest more in those bonds. Four, to ensure the implementation of development projects so as to bring about a smooth transfer from a wartime to peace economy. So implementation of development projects. So it also works into the introduction or initiation of development projects such as flyovers, such as manufacturing units, production units, in developing the infrastructure. So it also works into the development projects also. Fifth, to promote capital investment in member countries by the following ways. A, to provide guarantee on private loans or capital investment. B, if private capital is not available even after providing guarantee, then IBRD provide loans for productive activities on considerate conditions. So if a country like Pakistan wants to issue a loan or wants to do financing for its projects, one way to help out World Bank can provide a guarantee that anyone who provides a loan, even if Pakistan fails to pay back the money, the World Bank will pay off that money. Number one. Number two, could be that the World Bank in itself, through its group, one of the components of its group is IBRD, which provides loan for restructuring and developments. Hence, World Bank will directly provide loans so that a productive work can be done. Next, functions. Let's go towards the functions of the World Bank. Number one, functions: granting reconstruction loans to war devastated countries. So any country which is war devastated, such as Iran, such as Iraq, Iran, not Iran, such as Iraq, such as Japan at its time. So there are many countries which are war devastated. World Bank provides them with funding. Granting development loans to underdeveloped countries. So it provides development loans, meaning loans for purposes of making projects, developing projects. Three, providing loans to governments for agriculture, irrigation, power, transport, water supply, education, health. So it provides loans on these certain small activities also to the government. Four, providing loans to private concerns for specified projects, such as we just discussed that if a country is going through a very private project, and it's not able to fund that. Hence, we can take assistance of World Bank. Fifth, promoting foreign investment by guaranteeing loans provided by other organizations. Six, providing technical, economic, and monetary advice to member countries for the specific project. So if you're installing, let's suppose, a power project in the country, so the World Bank can provide you with technical, economic, and monetary advice that how to implement that project. Seven, encouraging industrial development of underdeveloped countries by promoting economic reforms. So it encourages industrial development. If you will feel that up till now what we have understood about World Bank versus the IMF, IMF was most keen towards balance of payments, stability of exchange rates, being a doctor, being a teacher, providing assistance. So the commonality between the both is that they both provide assistance, financial assistance, but the World Bank primary focus is towards less developed countries, whereas IMF primary focus towards those countries which go through balance of payments equilibrium, this equilibrium. Number two important difference, the World Bank is primarily focused towards development projects, development loans, loans to those countries which are devastated from wars. So its primary focus is towards the development of the country, whereas IMF used to provide loans or short on cash for those countries which used to be under this equilibrium of balance of payments issue, right? So these are few, you can feel the difference between an IMF and a World Bank. So these were the functions of a World Bank. Who are the World Bank's top borrowers? You can see different countries' name and also ours. This list is up till 2015, right? So this data is a bit old. It's up to 2015. So the current list could be different also. Number one borrower was Mexico. Number two, so Mexico has borrowed a lot of money. Number two was Brazil. One of the reasons that Brazil went through a very huge economic turmoil. Number three top borrower was Turkey, even ahead of Pakistan. So by 2015, Turkey was even a biggest borrower than Pakistan. Then came China. Then came India. Then came Argentina. So you can see these were the biggest borrower countries. Now I want to highlight one analytical point over here. So from this list of 2015, we can realize that borrowing money is not a bad thing until you are investing that in the right resources, in the right projects. Now let's suppose Mexico couldn't do that, Brazil couldn't do that, Argentina couldn't do that. Hence, they are at a default status. Turkey is pulling back up through good development projects. China, since 2015, is coming to become a world power. So China has grown very much. India has grown a lot in those 5 years. Pakistan is still in a very unstable condition. So we can see that borrowing money is not a bad thing. What do you do with that borrowed money is what matters. Are you investing that money in good development projects? Are you investing that money in industrial uplift of your country so that you can get something in return, and then you can get the payback ability and pay back that money to the borrower or to the lenders also, right? So that's how you're going through. That's what are the top borrowers of the World Bank. And it's, it also shows our name. However, World Bank's top contributors, who are the people who contribute or deposit money in the World Bank? Obviously, number one comes in USA, 16.39%. Again, this is a list of 2015, right? Up to 2015. Then comes Japan. Obviously, Japan is going down in the economy terms right now, but up till 2015 was what second highest contributor. Now, if you go and look up to Japan's size of the economy, that's a very small size, but yet it has so much money. Why? because of exports. 3, Germany contributing 4.49, UK contributing 4.3, France contributing 4.3. Now, just imagine France was the country initially to from which World Bank it took borrowing from the World Bank because France was devastated by the World War, and in by 2015 it was so established that it was contributing to World Bank. So that's how you grow as a country. Right economic policies, right social policies, right intention, good leadership can make your country even grow in a scenario even if you're borrowing money from the World Bank. So France was able to very well. Germany was also devastated after World War. India and World Bank. Let's get to an understanding because India is in our, you can say that, in our subcontinent. I would just like you to go through this one by one. Just go through this. Just do a just certain reading because how you would get to know how subcontinent has emerged by using the money of World Bank. So just go through that. So you must have got an understanding how India used the World Bank and how World Bank was able to facilitate India. Criticism on the World Bank. So the criticism is one of the major criticism on the World Bank, also in the IMF, is that it promotes what Washington wants to do, like what USA wants to do in the world. It promotes that because one of the huge or biggest stakeholder of the World Bank or even the IMF is the USA. So promoting Washington consensus and allow only big corporation to flourish, to ignore the environmental and social impact of projects, 3, resentment and social turmoil in India cause high debt amongst the countries. Working with private sector will lead to decrease in the role of the state as primary provider. Decisions are made and policies implemented by leading industrialized countries. So these are certain criticism that is followed under the World Bank and even IMFs. These are some of the good criticism that is made to them, right? So this was the World Bank that we understood, and we have understood two organizations, the IMF and the World Bank in itself. Now, my next organization would be World Trade Organization, WTO, World Trade Organization. And we can expect that World Trade Organization, basically the primary objective is that it makes trading amongst different countries free. That is, it tries to promote free trade between different countries. It tries to remove barriers of trade in between different countries. This is one of the major objective of World Trade Organization. So just reading down, World Trade Organization is the only international organization dealing with the global rules of trade between the nations. Its main function is to ensure that trade flows as smoothly, predictably, and freely as possible. That's one of the major role of the World Trade Organization. Facts about World Trade Organization. Its location is Geneva, Switzerland. Established in 1995, so not so old. It's a young organization. Created by Uruguay round negotiations. Membership 162 countries are member of this. Budget is 196 million Swiss francs for 2011. Secretariat, it has 640 staff. Head is Roberto Azevedo, General Director of the World Trade Organization. Again, these data is going to reflect up to 2015. Non-discrimination. The basic principles of WTO is non-discrimination. One should not discriminate in terms of trade. For example, India is trading with many countries by imposing some tariffs on import or export, but account to WTO, we cannot impose high tariffs on one trading nation and low tariffs on another. We have to treat them equally. So India is trading with different countries with some low tariffs, some with high tariffs, but WTO believes that equality should prevail so that everyone gets a good chance of trading. So one basic principle is non-discrimination. Number two is transparency. For example, India changed its policies regarding direct foreign investment. So Indian government released a press note for other country regarding its policy change. Press note came in effect from May 12, 2015. So if any country, if India or Pakistan are changing their trading policies or a policy regarding to FDI, they should publish those policies. Like you can say that WTO might be a little upset on Pakistan that it does not disclose much about its policies with trading with China. That may upset the WTO because that's not a good rule of transparency. Binding projects, basic principle of binding commitments. India is doing free trade with Sri Lanka and Thailand, having trade agreements with Bangladesh, Bhutan, Maldives, Japan, South Korea, and Mongolia, etc. So the reason we have taken India as an example over here is because India is one of the big economies which trades a lot. So it has some free trade agreements with different countries. Hence, binding commitments mean India has to follow those commitments. This cannot happen that by word they are saying it's free trade, but they start imposing some tariffs. They have to fulfill those commitments. So one of the objectives is that reciprocity. In case of Russia, USA, Iran, UNO, trade sanctions were imposed on Russia and Iran, prohibiting them to do trade with other countries. So reciprocity means if one country is imposing sanctions on trade to another country, so WTO will come and replicate that and will impose the same on those countries also. So they will impose the trade sanctions on those countries also. Safety valve. India imposes sanctions on import of tires from China as it threatens the domestic tire manufacturing company sales. So it also the WTO also guides on safety valve. If you can see, India wanted their own tire industry to flourish, hence they had to impose imports. Now on that, hence they had to impose tariffs. So on that, WTO will not interfere. They believe, okay, fine, they are keeping their industry safe. Then it's not a big problem to put tariffs on imports in order to save your own industry. These are certain objectives of WTO, which is to improve the standard of living people in member countries, to ensure, obviously, standard of living will be improved if there is good trading between two countries, ensure full employment, ensure enlarged production and trade of goods. See, through trading, your market increases, hence you can produce larger amounts of goods. To increase trade or services, to ensure optimum utilization of world resources, to protect the environment, and to accept the concept of sustainable development. So these are certain objectives of World Trade Organization. Again, you can see those transactions are highly focused on trading part. You can see the word trade coming again and again. So it is very much focused or very much dependent on the trading part element of the economy, right? So it's very much influenced or dependent on the trading part. Furthermore, functions of WTO: administering the WTO trade agreements between two countries, forum of trade negotiations. If one country want to negotiate with another country regarding on certain trade conditions, it can come into World Trade Organization and discussions can be done. Handling trade disputes such as India-Pakistan trade disputes, World Trade Organization have been handling for a long time now. Monitoring national trade policies, provide technical assistance and training for development countries to improve their trading with other countries, cooperation with international organizations such as IMF, such as World Bank. It cooperates with them to help and engage with them regarding their. This is the structure of WTO. This is WTO. It has one called highest authority. It has one called second level. It has one thing called third level. It has one thing called fourth levels. So basically, it starts from the highest to these levels. It's basically the management structure of the WTO. So now over here, it describes you what is the highest authority, what is the second level, what is the third level. I would just want you to go through that reading. Just read the highest authority, what is it, and then read the second level. If you've read this, it's just a slide reading. It's self-explanatory, so I'm not going into detail of it. You can read the third level and the fourth level as well. Okay. Just let's slightly understand the agreements that World Trade Organization go through. Number one, the World Trade Organization agreements cover goods, services, and intellectual property as well. They include individual countries' commitments to lower custom tariffs and other trade barriers and to open and keep open services markets. These agreements are often called the World Trade Trading Rules, and WTO is often described as rule-based, a system based on rules. The agreements for two largest areas are goods and services. So two largest area, one of the, let's suppose agreement could be on agriculture, on different things agreements could be there. So these are the agreements that World Trade Organization makes, and those agreements are also stated on these slides. You can go through once just to have your own reading, right? So you can have your own reading on it as well. So basically, we just took a slight understanding of what is or what do we mean by World Trade Organization, right? So we have done three important international institutes: IMF, World Bank, World Trade Organization, their impact in the international finance. One obviously remained missing, that is the Asian development. I might do that, cover it a bit in the next lecture, next week lecture maybe. So these are the three important international finance institutes with their roles. Hope you understand.